Why? Why can't you get this right? Lucas muttered, shaking his head in frustration. You're my son, Ethan. My son. This is elementary math. 7-year-old Ethan Carter sat silent, shoulders curled, his fingers gripping the edge of the chair as if holding himself together. He didn't cry. He'd learned not to, especially when his father got that look in his eyes, the one that said failure wasn't allowed in this house. Lucas let out a breath, slow and long. You've failed 4 math tests in a row. I've hired the best tutors money can buy. What do I get? 0 progress. If you can't pass the next one, I'm done letting you waste time. He turned and walked out, grabbing his coat from the rack. Ethan stayed frozen. From behind the hallway corner, Maya William had heard every word. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She was just on her way to vacuum the library. But now, her heart ached. Not out of pity, no. She knew that feeling too well. Being told you're failing, when no one ever asked how your brain works in the first place. She glanced down at her cleaning cart, then back at the boy. Later that afternoon, when Lucas left for his business trip in Seattle, Maya found Ethan alone in the sunroom, doodling in the margins of another worksheet. Hey, she said gently, not wanting to scare him. I know I'm just the maid, but would you want to try a game? Ethan shrugged. Does it have math? A little. She smiled. But with Ms. That made him look up. They cleared the coffee table, laid out colored candies in groups, and Maya showed him how to see addition like building towers, multiplication like skipping stones. They laughed when she miscounted on purpose. They made mistakes together, then fixed them together. It wasn't school. It wasn't pressure. It was learning. Every afternoon for a week, as long as Lucas was away. Maya met Ethan in secret by the kitchen island, in the laundry room, even once behind the greenhouse. They used cereal, bottle caps, paper clips. They made math into something Ethan could touch. And slowly, something incredible happened. Ethan began to understand. He passed the next test. Then the one after that. By the third, his teacher called Lucas to say, "Whatever you're doing at home, it's working." Lucas was baffled. There were no new tutors. No scheduled sessions. Must be the pressure finally sinking in. He muttered, proud, though puzzled. Then came the afternoon he came home early. The staff wasn't expecting him. Maya certainly wasn't. She and Ethan were sitting on the floor of the reading room, arranging flashcards shaped like pizza slices. Ethan was laughing, his voice bright, counting aloud with joy Maya hadn't seen on his face before. Lucas stepped in. What the hell is going on here? Ethan froze. Maya's heart dropped into her stomach. Lucas's face twisted with disbelief. You're the maid. Who told you to teach my son? I didn't. Maya stood, flustered. I didn't mean I just. You think this is appropriate? His voice rose. You went behind my back? Used my child to play school? Mr. Carter, she tried again. But then Ethan stood up. She helped me, he said, voice shaking. You said I was a failure. But she never did. Lucas looked down at his son. For a second, the rage cracked into confusion. What? She taught me with candy, with drawings. She showed me it's okay to see things differently. He held up one of the flashcards proudly. I passed because of her. Lucas looked at Maya. She didn't flinch. She just met his gaze and said quietly, I didn't plan this. I just saw a child who needed help. And I knew how to help, because I used to be him. Silence settled over the room. Lucas looked at the worksheet Ethan had proudly left on the floor, 95 out of 100. Then he looked back at his son standing straighter than usual. And finally, at Maya who, for once, didn't look like the help, but like someone who believed in something bigger than rules. He didn't speak again that evening. Not when he left the room. Not when Maya returned to folding laundry. Not even when Ethan said goodnight. But the next morning, Lucas walked into the kitchen, placed a new whiteboard on the wall, and said, if you're going to keep teaching my son, at least do it properly. Then he handed Maya a dry erase marker. Maya stared at it, unsure if she was supposed to respond. Lucas crossed his arms. You can continue helping him, but under one condition. She nodded slowly. Yes, sir? You don't overstep. He's still my son. You're not a teacher. And I'm not handing over his future to a housemaid with good intentions. Keep it simple. Math only. Understand? Yes, she said softly, meeting his eyes. I understand. He gave a slight nod, then turned and walked away, pulling out his phone before he'd even left the room. Maya let out a slow breath. Her hands were still damp from the dishes, but her fingers trembled slightly as she reached out to open the box. Inside was a sleek whiteboard, shiny and unblemished, along with a set of color-coded markers and a pack of math-themed magnets, shaped like numbers and symbols. She didn't smile. Not yet. Not until she knew what this truly meant. By mid-morning, she and Ethan were setting up the board in the breakfast nook, just under the window where the sun filtered in warm and gentle. They took their time arranging it. Maya measured the distance between the magnets like a perfectionist, and Ethan kept asking if they could use blue for subtraction and green for multiplication. I think green feels like multiplying, he explained. Green it is, Maya said. Their first lesson under official permission began with what Ethan called the snack shop challenge, where he had to add up orders using toy cookies and juice boxes. Maya adjusted her approach, slightly less playful than their secret sessions, more structured, but she kept the warmth, the praise, the safety. You're doing great, she said when he got 5 in a row correct. Ethan beamed. I think the board helps. It's not the board, she said, tapping his temple gently. It's the brain behind it. The house felt different now, not louder, not busier, but somehow warmer. Like someone had turned up the volume on life just enough to notice. Still, Maya moved with quiet caution. Every time she walked through the halls with the markers in her apron pocket, she felt the invisible line she wasn't supposed to cross. Lucas's warning echoed in her mind. Don't overstep. That afternoon, as they finished a lesson on even and odd numbers using colored blocks, Lucas walked into the room. He didn't interrupt, just stood silently by the doorway, watching. Ethan didn't notice. He was too focused, too proud of his little tower of number pairs. 4 + 2 is 6. That's even, Ethan said, grinning. Correct, Maya affirmed, then glanced at Lucas briefly. Her posture straightened. Lucas said nothing, but his eyes scanned the board, the blocks, the worksheets neatly stacked in the corner. After a few seconds, he turned and walked out, still silent. That evening, as Maya was wiping down the counters, the older housekeeper, Mrs. Adela, came by with a basket of linens. You've made an impression, she said, half whispering. Maya raised an eyebrow. What kind? Adela smirked. The kind that either gets you fired or promoted to the unofficial family member. Be careful. Maya nodded, but said nothing. She knew better than to assume anything. A kind word today didn't always mean security tomorrow. Later that night, as she headed to her quarters above the garage, she found a small note folded on the stair rail. It was written in blocky, uneven handwriting. Thank you for the board. Today was fun. I like green now. E. She smiled at the paper for a long time before slipping it into her pocket. That night, as she drifted to sleep, she didn't dream about her old life or the warnings of the past. She dreamed of numbers floating like stars, scattered, imperfect, but slowly coming together to make something whole. By the end of the week, the whiteboard in the breakfast nook was no longer pristine. It was filled with equations, colorful shapes, hand-drawn emojis, and Ethan's proud little notes. I got it, in green marker. I hate fractions, in red, and a smiley face with big ears drawn in blue. Every morning, Maya arrived in the nook 10 minutes early, setting up lessons that disguised themselves as games. She never called it studying. She never made Ethan sit still for more than 15 minutes. She made up math songs, let him tap the table to count rhythm, and used measuring cups from the kitchen to explain proportions. Ethan, once a boy who shrank into silence, now sat up taller, asked questions, and even more telling, laughed. But for all the progress inside the nook, the rest of the house wasn't as warm. Maya noticed it first with Mrs. Adela. The once chatty housekeeper stopped pausing to talk. She passed Maya in the hallway with polite nods, her eyes never meeting hers. Then the groundskeeper, Bernard, usually a source of morning jokes, grew tight-lipped whenever Maya walked by. It didn't take long before she overheard them. "She's getting too comfortable," Adela whispered one afternoon while polishing silver in the butler's pantry. "She's been in the breakfast room for hours," Bernard added. "Carter pays her to sweep floors, not to play schoolteacher. They say the boy's improving," another voice chimed in. "But she's still just the help. What happens if she gets it wrong?" Maya froze outside the door, her spine stiffening. She hadn't meant to listen, but their words found her like smoke under a door. She took a breath, forced her shoulders to relax, and continued on with her tasks. She'd heard worse, much worse. Still, that night, as she erased the board and gathered up the magnets, she moved slower. Her fingers lingered on the words Ethan had scrawled in green. "I like numbers now." She traced them with her thumb, quietly wondering how long this would last. The next day, during a lesson on multiplication tables, Ethan asked, "Why don't you have your own classroom?" Maya smiled but didn't answer immediately. "I mean," Ethan continued, frowning, "you're better than my school teacher. You don't get mad when I mess up. And you make numbers make sense." Maya set down the flashcards. "That's sweet of you, baby. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, people don't get the job they're best at." Why not?" She considered her words carefully. "Because not everyone gets the same chance. Sometimes, folks get looked over, or told they don't belong in places they were born to be in." Ethan looked puzzled. "That's dumb." She chuckled. "It is." He paused. "Do you like working here?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I like helping you." That seemed to satisfy him. But the question lingered in her mind long after he went upstairs for his afternoon reading hour. Later that afternoon, Lucas returned home early. Maya didn't know until she heard his voice echoing through the hallway. "Adela, I want the reports from the security team this week, and tell Bernard to double-check the camera footage around the perimeter." He sounded stressed, sharper than usual. When he entered the breakfast nook, Maya immediately straightened. Ethan was solving a problem about measuring distances using toy cars lined up in various lengths. He looked up and grinned. "Dad, I used your Tesla as 10 feet. Lucas blinked, caught off guard by his son's enthusiasm. "Is that so?" "Yeah, and the truck is 15. Maya said we can turn the living room into a racetrack if we use math." Lucas's eyes flicked to Maya. For a moment, she wasn't sure what he'd say. Instead, he only nodded. "Good work." As he turned to leave, Maya caught the faintest crease in his brow. Not quite disapproval, but not comfort, either. That night, Lucas called Maya into his study. She wiped her hands and entered slowly, unsure what awaited. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." She did. "I've reviewed Ethan's progress reports from school," he said. "His teacher called again today. She said he's a different child. More confident, focused, curious." Maya nodded silently. Lucas continued. "They asked if we'd hired a professional tutor. I told them no." She tensed. He looked at her. "I want to be clear. You're doing something I didn't expect, and I appreciate the progress. But I also need boundaries. This isn't a teaching position. I can't have the staff thinking there's a shift in hierarchy. You understand?" "Yes," she said calmly. "I do." He leaned back. "Good. Keep going. Just keep it quiet." The words hit harder than he likely intended. "Keep going, but stay invisible." After she left the study, Maya walked outside into the garden, needing air. The stars were out sharp, clear, and bright over the California sky. She thought of her mother, of the nights they'd studied together on the back porch of their tiny Louisiana home, using bottle caps and chalk and prayers. Her mother had never made it to college, but she taught Maya how to multiply using biscuits and how to divide using kindness. She wondered what her mother would think of this place, of this job, of this boy. "Maybe," Maya whispered to the wind, "I'm not a miracle worker, but maybe I'm the right person at the right moment." And with that, she walked back inside, quiet, but steady. The following Monday morning, a new energy buzzed through the Carter household. Ethan bounded down the stairs, hair still sticking up from sleep, proudly clutching his most recent math test. A crisp sheet of paper with a glowing red 98 circled in the top corner. He raced into the kitchen where Maya was setting a tray of toast and eggs. "Look!" he shouted, holding it up like a trophy. Maya took the paper with both hands, examining it with deliberate slowness before letting out a low whistle. "Well now, that's 2 points short of perfect. I got confused on one of the word problems," he admitted, sheepish. "But the rest? Easy. You're getting fast." "No," Ethan said, chest puffing up. "I'm getting smart." Maya bent down and hugged him, holding the paper a little longer than she needed to. "You've always been smart. Now you're just seeing it, too." Lucas entered moments later, glancing up from his phone. "What's all the shouting?" Ethan ran over, waving the test in his father's face. "Look." Lucas took the paper, his brow lifting slightly. 98. "Huh." He paused, then looked at Maya. "Well, I suppose that calls for some kind of reward. I already got toast," Ethan joked. Lucas smiled thin, but genuine. "Number something better. Let's take a trip this weekend. Just you and me. San Diego. Spend the night. Maybe catch a game." Ethan blinked. "Really? You've earned it." Maya stood silently in the background, watching the exchange. She felt pride swell in her chest and something else. Distance. On Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang just after Ethan's lesson ended. Maya wiped her hands on a dish towel and went to answer it. A young woman stood outside with a crisp delivery box bearing the name of an exclusive children's boutique in San Francisco. "Package for Ethan Carter," she said. Maya signed, thanked her, and carried it inside. "Open it," Ethan cried, bouncing in place. Inside was a brand new tablet, preloaded with math apps, puzzle games, and a sleek case with his name engraved on the back. "There's a card," Maya noted, handing it to him. Ethan opened it. "To Ethan. For your hard work and focus. Keep it up." "Dad." Maya didn't speak. She just watched him turn the device over and over in his hands, his face somewhere between awe and hesitation. "Do you like it?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Yeah, it's cool." But that night, he didn't touch the tablet. He kept it in the box on his nightstand and chose instead to work through flashcards with Maya, the old-fashioned way. The next day, just as the lesson was winding down, Maya noticed Lucas standing silently in the hallway, half hidden by the doorframe. He watched them for a moment, Ethan solving a multiplication puzzle, Maya correcting gently, always with warmth. When the boy ran off to wash up before dinner, Lucas entered the room. "You've done more than I expected," he said quietly. Maya didn't reply immediately. "You've got away with him. He just needed a little light to find his own path," she said simply. Lucas nodded. "Still, I'm aware this wasn't part of your job description." She looked him in the eyes. "I'm not asking for anything extra, sir. That's not what I meant." There was a pause. Then he continued. "Slower now. More careful." "I've been thinking," Lucas said. "Ethan's confidence, his progress, it's worth investing in. Maybe there's something formal we can do. A tutoring role, perhaps." Maya blinked. "Sir?" "A part-time education coordinator. Something simple. You'd be paid appropriately. Of course, you'd still handle your regular duties." She felt the warmth drain from her hands. "So, I'd be a maid? And a tutor?" He didn't flinch. "You'd be compensated." Maya straightened her shoulders. "With respect, Mr. Carter, I didn't help your son for money. I helped him because he deserved to be seen." Lucas's face hardened just slightly. "Let's not make this personal." "But it is personal," she said, voice steady. "To him, to me. You're asking me to split myself in half. To be more, but only within limits." Lucas stared at her, unmoving. The silence stretched long enough for the distant sound of Ethan's laughter to drift in from the backyard. Finally, Lucas spoke. "We hired a maid, Miss William, not a miracle worker." Maya nodded once, slow and heavy. That's right. But sometimes, miracles come disguised in aprons. She walked past him without another word. Later that night, Ethan padded into the kitchen in his pajamas, holding the unopened tablet box. Can I give this to someone else? He asked. Maya looked up from wiping the counters. Why? I think it's cool. But I'd rather keep learning like we have been. She smiled gently. It's your gift. You do what feels right. Huh. He hesitated, then smiled. Can we use the cups again tomorrow? For fractions? You bet. As she turned out the lights that evening, Maya felt the weight of the day settle into her bones. Not exhaustion, but something deeper, a knowing that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. That change always comes with resistance. But also, that one boy now believed in himself because someone dared to believe first. And for tonight, that was enough. Saturday morning dawned quiet and golden across the Carter estate. The San Diego trip was postponed. Lucas had an unexpected investor meeting, and Ethan, although disappointed, had accepted it without fuss. Instead, he had asked Maya if they could turn the breakfast nook into Math City. By 10 o'clock, paper bridges stretched between stools, toy cars zipped across number lines, flashcards formed skyscrapers, and Ethan was the mayor of a world where every answer had a purpose and every mistake got a second chance. Maya stood at the kitchen island watching him, her heart tugged between pride and worry. Since their conversation in the hallway 2 nights before, Lucas hadn't said another word about her dual role. But the quiet felt loaded like the pause before a verdict. As Maya set out a plate of fruit, Ethan ran over holding a worksheet. I made my own problem. Oh yeah? She said, drying her hands. He pointed. If 4 trains each carry 6 people, and 2 more trains arrive with 10 each, how many people total? Maya read it, then looked at him, impressed. That's advanced thinking. I used groups and addition. She bent down to meet his eyes. And what's your answer? 44, he shouted, proud. Correct. She high-fived him. Mayor Ethan saves the day. He giggled, then ran back to his flashcard buildings. That's when the knock came. A sharp, polite tap on the front door. Maya glanced up. Checking the hallway, no other staff around. She wiped her hands and opened the door. Standing there was a tall woman in a sharp navy suit, briefcase in hand, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. She looked corporate. Precise. Like she didn't smile unless legally obligated. Maya William? The woman asked. Yes. The woman removed her glasses. My name is Julia Marks. I'm an educational consultant. Mr. Carter hired me to evaluate his son's academic development. Maya blinked. I wasn't told. I'm aware. He wanted it unannounced. Part of the evaluation. Maya stood aside, hesitant. Of course. Please come in. Julia stepped inside and scanned the room with swift efficiency. When she saw Ethan in the nook, surrounded by number-shaped blocks, she paused. Is that him? Yes. Is he always this engaged? When he's not being watched like a science project? Yes, Maya said carefully. Julia raised a brow but didn't respond. She walked over and crouched beside Ethan. Hello, she said. Ethan looked up warily. I'm Miss Marks. I'm here to see how much fun you're having with numbers. Ethan looked at Maya, uncertain. She gave him a nod. Just be yourself, baby. The consultant began asking questions slowly at first, then rapidly increasing in complexity. To Maya's astonishment, Ethan kept up. He missed a few, stumbled once, but never shut down. His eyes stayed bright, his posture straight. When they finished, Julia stood and turned back to Maya. He's at least 2 grade levels ahead in comprehension, possibly 3. Has he been evaluated for gifted programs? No, Maya replied. He was failing a month ago. Julia frowned. That doesn't add up. You're the tutor? Maya straightened her spine. I'm the maid. But yes, I've been helping him. Julia studied her. Do you have teaching credentials? Number. Then how? I listened. I adapted. I taught him how to see math through his eyes, not mine. Julia didn't speak for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. Just then, Lucas walked in, briefcase still in hand. "Julia," he said, clearly surprised to see her mid-evaluation. "I thought you'd be gone by now." "I extended the session," Julia replied. "Your son's progress is remarkable." Lucas looked at Ethan, who was now stacking math blocks into a tower. "Yes. We've seen improvement. I'd recommend further enrichment," Julia said. "But I also suggest something else, formal training for whoever's instructing him. Talent is one thing. Structure is another." Lucas glanced at Maya. "We've discussed it." Julia gave a tight smile. "I'd consider making it official. She's doing the work. Whether you call her maid, tutor, or miracle." She left without another word. Lucas stood in silence for a moment, then turned to Maya. "She's not wrong." Maya looked at him carefully. "So, what happens now?" Lucas rubbed the back of his neck. "I'll draft a new agreement. A formal tutoring role, with proper compensation and defined hours." Maya exhaled slowly. "Thank you, but," Lucas added, "you'll still report to the household manager. This can't look like favoritism." Maya's expression didn't change. "Understood." Lucas started to walk away, then paused. "You've changed him, Maya. More than I ever could." "No," she said softly, looking at Ethan. "He just needed someone to believe he wasn't broken." Lucas left the room. Maya stood for a moment, watching Ethan build his tower higher, carefully balancing each block. That night, as she returned to her room above the garage, she found a folded napkin tucked under her pillow. In Ethan's handwriting, it read, "I told Miss Marks you're the best teacher in the world. She didn't say anything. But I know it's true." Maya pressed the napkin to her chest, eyes closed. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged not just in the house, but at the table. 2 weeks had passed since Julia Marks's unexpected visit, and the Carter household had settled into a rhythm that almost resembled harmony. Maya now split her hours more formally. Mornings were for Ethan's lessons. Afternoons returned her to cleaning schedules and kitchen duty. But in truth, everyone knew the real transformation of the estate had nothing to do with vacuum lines or polished marble. It was the boy. Ethan was changing. He laughed more. He asked questions with confidence, not fear. His eyes no longer darted downward when adults entered a room. There was a steadiness to him now, a calm intelligence that couldn't be missed. Lucas, ever the stoic, had noticed. He didn't say much, never did, but the small gestures revealed more than words. A nod from across the room during a lesson, a fresh delivery of math supplies, even a few times where he paused just to listen at the breakfast nook without interrupting. Maya caught him watching Ethan once, a rare softness behind his eyes. She didn't mention it. She didn't have to, but not everything had changed. The other staff remained cold, civil, but clipped. There were whispers, silences that stretched too long when Maya entered the room. Some thought she was climbing too fast, too far, forgetting her place. Others simply resented the attention she now drew from Lucas. Maya ignored it, for the most part. She reminded herself why she stayed, why she'd do it all again. Still, the tension showed itself in odd ways. One evening, as Maya was gathering flashcards from the kitchen counter, she noticed the erasers were missing from the math box. Just gone. She checked every drawer, every shelf. Ethan hadn't moved them. "I don't get it," he said. "We had them this morning." Maya didn't answer, but later, she found one behind the garbage bin covered in syrup, unusable. Another had been soaked and tossed behind the dryer in the laundry room. She said nothing to Ethan. But she cleaned it up, replaced the erasers herself, and wrote a note to the household manager requesting the school materials be kept secure. The response came back short. "Please refrain from treating the staff's quarters like a classroom." That evening, as she stepped outside to breathe, Maya stared up at the stars and asked herself a question she hadn't dared speak aloud in years. What if you deserve more than this? The next morning brought new friction. Lucas called her into the study before lessons began. His desk was cluttered with papers, coffee steaming beside a silver laptop. "Ethan's mother called," he said without looking up. Maya stiffened. She had never heard the woman's name mentioned in the house before. Not once in all her time there. She's concerned. He continued. Says she heard from someone on staff that Ethan's spending more time with the help than with a licensed instructor. Maya remained still. I've been following the guidelines you gave me. I know, he said, meeting her eyes. But this is delicate. She's already threatened to push for a custody revision. Maya's heart sank. I would never stand in the way of... I'm not blaming you. He interrupted. I just need to be cautious. Appearances matter, Maya. You know that. Yes, she said quietly. I do. He hesitated. I may need to pause the formal tutoring, just for a few weeks. Until I smooth this over. Maya's face remained neutral, but her voice dropped. He'll know. Lucas sighed. We can shift to evening sessions. Quiet. Unoficial. So, back to pretending I don't exist during the day? He didn't answer. She nodded. Understood. That afternoon, the lesson continued as usual. But something had changed. Ethan sensed it. His answers slowed. His eyes wandered. The smile that used to light up his face after solving a problem barely flickered. Maya tried to lift the mood. She played one of their math games. Guess the number. But Ethan wasn't playing along. Finally, he set down his pencil. Did I do something wrong? Maya blinked. Of course not. Then why are you being quiet? He asked. She paused, then knelt beside him. Grown-ups sometimes make choices that don't make sense to kids, or even to other grown-ups. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. He looked at her, his voice small. Are you leaving? No, she said. I'm still here. He stared at her, eyes wide. Then promise. I promise. The next day, the math board was gone, replaced by a decorative mirror and a tall vase of white lilies. Maya found the board behind the basement door, folded neatly, the markers gone. She didn't say a word. But that night, while the rest of the house slept, she pulled out her own notebook. She spent hours copying down lesson plans by hand, creating new flashcards, drawing charts with a ruler and colored pencils she bought herself. And the next evening, when Ethan snuck into the laundry room after dinner, she was waiting for him, a clean towel on the floor between them, and a simple equation written in orange crayon. 3x equals 27. Ethan smiled, and so they continued, quiet, hidden, but learning all the same, because some lessons aren't taught in classrooms. They're taught in quiet corners, in whispered promises, and in the spaces where no one thinks to look. For the next several days, Maya and Ethan met like clockwork in the back laundry room, their secret classroom lit by a single floor lamp and the spark of shared determination. She brought worksheets tucked inside folded towels. He brought questions wrapped in curiosity. It wasn't ideal, not the comfort of the breakfast nook with sunlight streaming through, but it worked. And for Maya, that meant everything. One evening, as they worked through a particularly tricky set of word problems, Ethan stopped mid-sentence. Why don't we tell my dad we're still doing lessons? He asked, voice hushed. Maya looked at him, pencil hovering over the page. Because sometimes, adults make decisions to keep peace even when it doesn't feel fair. Ethan frowned. But he said you were the reason I got better. He also said we needed to be careful. She reminded him gently. But careful feels like lying. Oh, she paused. It does, and I wish it didn't. Ethan fell quiet, then whispered, I don't want to go back to being stupid. You were never stupid, Maya said firmly. You were just waiting for the right way to understand. And you found it. Later that night, Maya sat alone in her quarters, staring at a photograph of her own fourth-grade classroom in Baton Rouge. She could still remember her teacher, Mrs. Dupree, who taught long division with candy bars and kept a hand on Maya's shoulder the first time she answered out loud. No fancy degree. Just a belief in children and their right to be seen. She wanted that for Ethan, no matter the risks. 3 mornings later, something shifted. Maya was scrubbing the baseboards in the upstairs hallway when she overheard raised voices coming from Lucas's study. She recognized Lucas's tone, tight, clipped, always in control. The second voice belonged to a woman. Sharp. Cold. I have every right to know what's happening under this roof, the woman snapped. Ethan's progress is being handled appropriately, Lucas replied. Then why was I told by the school that a maid has been acting as his tutor? There was a pause that punched through the quiet like a drum. She's not just a maid, Lucas said. Maya's hand froze on the sponge. Oh, so now she's what? Family? The woman shot back. You don't get to reframe this. We agreed on structure, on supervision. Structure wasn't helping him. She was. Then you should have hired a professional, not a charity case. Maya stepped back, heart pounding. She didn't hear the rest. She didn't want to. That afternoon, Lucas came home early. He didn't say much during dinner. He barely looked at Maya when she passed through the dining room. The next morning, a courier arrived with a thick envelope marked with the seal of Westbridge Academy, an elite private school known for high academic standards, and a screening test so rigorous even gifted children often failed. By noon, the test sat on the kitchen island with a note attached. Placement assessment. If he passes, he'll be eligible for the spring term. Please administer privately, L. Maya stared at it for a long time. She took the test upstairs and knocked softly on Ethan's door. You ready for a challenge? She asked. He looked up from his coloring book. Math? Big math. The kind that lets you show everyone what you can really do. He straightened. Let's do it. They sat together in the laundry room, Maya watching quietly as Ethan worked his way through the packet. It wasn't easy. The problems twisted and turned, some far beyond his current grade level. Twice, he froze. Once, he muttered, I can't. But Maya never gave him the answer. Only reminded him how far he'd come. You've solved harder than this, she whispered. Just breathe. 2 hours later, the final answer was scribbled in blue ink. Ethan leaned back, exhausted. Do you think I passed? I think you did more than that, Maya said. She didn't sleep that night. She reread every page, checked every margin. When she turned it in to Lucas the next morning, she didn't say anything. Just handed it over and walked away. The house held its breath for days. Then on Friday morning, Lucas called Ethan and Maya into the study. He stood by the window, back turned, a letter in his hand. They called me last night, he said. The results are in. Ethan clutched Maya's hand without thinking. She squeezed it gently. Lucas turned around, expression unreadable. He passed. Placed above average in every category. 2 full grade levels ahead in mathematical reasoning. Ethan's mouth dropped open. Maya held back a tear. Lucas continued, his voice quieter now. They offered him a spot, spring enrollment, with scholarship. Ethan looked up at Maya, eyes wide. That means I can go? Lucas nodded. Ethan whooped, yes. But Lucas raised a hand. Before we celebrate, there's something you both should know. His mother is pushing for joint custody again. This result strengthens her case. She may try to move him to another school. Another state. Maya's joy faltered. Ethan didn't understand. I don't want to go anywhere. We're working on it, Lucas said. But I need you to be prepared. After they left the study, Maya and Ethan sat on the back porch in silence. He rested his head on her shoulder. Will you still help me, if I leave? Always, she whispered, no matter where you go. Because she hadn't just taught him numbers. She'd taught him courage. And no test score in the world could measure that. The following week unraveled like a spool of tangled thread. Every day brought a new phone call, a new letter, a new legal document. Ethan's mother, Camille Whitmore, was no longer just a voice behind closed doors. She was suddenly everywhere. Her lawyer had filed a formal petition for joint custody, citing educational mismanagement as one of her core arguments. The term stung Lucas more than he let on. She's grasping, he muttered one evening, tossing a thick envelope onto his desk, claiming I withheld tutoring, delayed intervention, that I let a maid educate our son. Maya, who was organizing Ethan's lesson materials nearby, froze at the word. Lucas caught himself and looked up. I didn't mean, it's all right, she said softly but firmly. I know what she meant. Ethan, unaware of the legal tug-of-war taking place behind the scenes, remained focused on his future. He had already memorized the Westbridge uniform policy, and even practiced how he'd introduce himself to classmates. He spoke about the school like it was a dream he could almost touch. But dreams come with storms. 2 days later, a court-appointed counselor arrived at the house. A woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a clipboard. She introduced herself as Dr. Ruth Landry and explained that she'd be conducting a series of home visits to observe Ethan's current living conditions. "I just want to get a sense of his emotional well-being," she told Maya in the hallway. "Routine check, nothing invasive." Maya nodded politely but stayed close all afternoon. Dr. Landry watched Ethan in different settings during meals, while he read on the porch, even as he helped Bernard water the garden. And finally, during his evening study hour with Maya in the laundry room, "This is where you work with him?" Dr. Landry asked, raising an eyebrow as she looked around the cramped space. Maya smiled. "Not ideal. But it's where he feels most comfortable." Ethan beamed. "It's our secret math hideout." Dr. Landry watched them work through a geometry puzzle, Ethan piecing together a triangle from mismatched scraps of paper. When he got it right, he didn't cheer. He simply smiled and whispered, "I knew I could." That was the moment Maya saw it, the slight softening in Dr. Landry's eyes, the way her pen paused mid-note. When the counselor left, she took Maya aside and said quietly, "He's lucky to have you. Whatever your title is." Maya exhaled for the first time all day, but the reprieve didn't last. On Thursday, Camille herself showed up. She arrived in a sleek black car, stepping out in heels that clicked against the driveway like a countdown. Dressed in an ivory suit with red lipstick and a gold watch, she looked more like a senator than a mother. Lucas met her at the front door. Maya watched from the stairwell. "I want to see him," Camille said. "Now." Lucas tried to reason with her, suggesting she wait until Ethan finished his lessons, but Camille brushed past him. "I'm not here to be managed, Lucas. He's my son too." Ethan was in the kitchen, arranging spoons into multiplication groups with Maya when she walked in. "Ethan!" Camille exclaimed, arms open. He looked up, surprised, but didn't leap into her arms. "Hi," he said cautiously. Maya stepped back instinctively. Camille knelt beside him. "Baby. I missed you." He nodded slowly. "I've been doing math. I heard. And I saw your scores, so proud of you. But you don't need to be doing all that with." She glanced at Maya. "Well, never mind." Ethan's brow furrowed. "With what?" "Nothing," Camille said smoothly. "I just think it's time you came home with me. I've got a room ready. New books. Tutors. Real ones." Ethan looked at Maya, confused. "She means professionals," Maya said softly, kneeling beside him. "It's okay. I don't want to leave," Ethan said. "You wouldn't be leaving," Camille said quickly. "Just visiting." A long visit. Maya stayed silent, letting him decide. Camille stood. "We'll discuss it with your father." She left the kitchen with Lucas trailing behind, their voices muffled behind closed doors. That night, Ethan knocked on Maya's door. "Can I sleep in here tonight?" She hesitated, then nodded, guiding him in. He curled up on the old quilt she kept at the foot of her narrow bed. "Will I have to leave forever?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "I want to stay where I'm smart." Maya felt her throat tighten. "Then wherever you go, we'll keep learning." That promise still stands. He fell asleep with his hand wrapped around hers. The next morning, a new envelope arrived, this one marked with the official seal of the state of California. Accordat. Lucas paced in his study, scanning the document. "She's pushing hard," he muttered. "She's got testimony from a hired child psychologist, financial statements, even screenshots of staff complaints." Maya said nothing. Lucas looked up. "I might lose him." She met his gaze. "Then don't fight this like a businessman. Fight it like his father." He studied hair. "Will you speak at the hearing?" "If it'll help Ethan, yes." That afternoon, Maya returned to the laundry room, wiped the floor clean, and drew a big heart on a piece of cardboard. Inside it, she wrote, "The mind is smart, but the heart knows the way." She taped it to the wall, because the fight wasn't just about custody. It was about whose voice Ethan would carry forward, and Maya intended to make sure it was his own. The courtroom was colder than Maya expected, not in temperature, but in mood. The walls were lined with wood panels, but the space felt sterile, mechanical, like something designed to strip humanity from the people seated inside. Lucas sat stiffly at the front, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, his tie knotted too tight. Ethan sat beside him, swinging his legs nervously from a cushioned bench. Camille Whitmore was across the aisle, flawless in a navy blazer and pearl earrings. Her lawyer, a man who looked like he smiled only when billing hours, whispered into her ear. Maya sat in the back, invisible in the eyes of most, but acutely aware of every breath, every glance, every piece of paper being shuffled by the clerk. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that seemed to take everything in. "We are here to hear the custody modification request concerning Ethan Whitmore." "Carter," she began. "Both parties are present and represented. Let's proceed." Camille's lawyer started first. "Your Honor, we present that Miss Whitmore seeks joint custody of her son, Ethan, on the basis that his educational development was initially neglected under Mr. Carter's care. We have school reports indicating below-average performance prior to recent interventions, and documentation that the primary educational influence during this period was not a licensed educator but a household employee." Maya felt every eye shift, some subtly, some directly toward her. The lawyer continued. "This individual, Miss Maya William, while perhaps well-intentioned, lacks formal qualifications and operated outside the scope of her employment." Lucas's attorney countered. "Your Honor, while Miss William may not hold a teaching degree, the transformation in Ethan's academic performance is undeniable. We have the Westbridge Academy entrance exam results, corroborated by an independent educational consultant. Ethan has flourished under her guidance." The judge looked to Camille. "Miss Whitmore, you've remained largely absent from your son's life for over a year. Why now?" Camille straightened. "Because I was led to believe he was fine. I didn't know he was struggling until a former staff member informed me of the tutoring arrangement. I don't want to take him away, Your Honor. I just want to ensure he receives proper care, structure, and education." The judge nodded slowly. "Very well. I'd like to hear from Miss William directly." Maya's heart thudded. She hadn't been formally called to testify. But now, the entire room turned toward her. The bailiff led her to the witness stand. She sat, adjusted the microphone, and folded her hands in her lap. "Miss William," the judge began, "you've been working for Mr. Carter for how long?" "Just over a year, Your Honor. And you began helping Ethan with his studies when?" "A few months ago. After I saw he was struggling with math." "Did Mr. Carter ask you to step in?" "Not at first. I did it quietly. I wanted to help." The judge leaned in. "Why?" Maya glanced toward Ethan. "Because he was hurting. Not physically, but the kind of hurt you can't always see. He thought he wasn't smart, that he couldn't learn. But I saw different. I saw a boy who needed someone to see him, not just his grades." The courtroom was silent. "Do you believe your involvement changed the course of his education?" "Yes," Maya said. "But it wasn't just me. He did the work. He found his confidence. I just held the light long enough for him to walk toward it." Camille's lawyer stood. "But you're not a teacher." Maya didn't flinch. "I've never stood in a classroom with a whiteboard and 20 desks, but I've taught. I've taught a boy how to believe in himself again." The judge raised a hand, stopping the lawyer. She turned back to Maya. "Final question. Why did you keep teaching him, even when you were told to stop?" Maya swallowed. "Because the heart doesn't check credentials before it decides to care." A hush spread across the courtroom. Even Camille looked slightly rattled. The judge leaned back in her chair. "I've heard enough for now. Recess until tomorrow morning. I'll give my ruling then." The gavel struck. People began to move, but Maya remained seated for a moment longer. As she stepped down, Ethan rushed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You were amazing," he whispered. "You made me brave." Maya knelt to hug him, her voice trembling. You've always been brave. You just needed to see it. Lucas approached. Thank you, for everything. Maya nodded but didn't speak. Her heart was too full. As they stepped outside into the fading afternoon light, Maya looked back at the courthouse, a building of laws, of order, of sharp suits and sharper words. But for all its power, it still couldn't define the thing she had with Ethan. That belonged to a different language. One made of patience, chalk dust, and silent promises. The fight wasn't over. The ruling was still to come. But whatever happened tomorrow, Maya had already won something bigger. A boy who now believed in his mind, and a system that, for one brief moment, had been forced to see the worth in a woman like her. The next morning, the air around the courthouse carried a strange stillness. It wasn't the hush of quiet, but the kind that lingers before a storm passes. The waiting room outside the courtroom was nearly full. Lucas, Maya, Ethan, Camille, their lawyers, and a court officer occasionally glancing at the clock above the exit door. Ethan sat between Lucas and Maya, his legs swinging back and forth, nervously drumming against the chair. Maya rested a hand gently on his back. "Will the judge say I have to go with her?" he whispered, not looking up. Maya leaned down, her voice just above a breath. "Whatever happens, your voice was heard. That matters." Lucas nodded slightly, folding his hands. "We prepared for every outcome." Ethan didn't look convinced, but he gave a small nod and tried to sit still. At 9:07, the bailiff opened the doors. "Court is now in session. All rise." The judge entered, robe flowing, her expression unreadable. As everyone sat, she adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "Yesterday, I listened to testimony regarding the custody modification of Ethan Whitmore, Carter. The arguments were compelling, and both parties have demonstrated love and concern for the child involved." She glanced down at her notes. "There is no question that Ethan's recent academic progress is remarkable. And while unconventional, the role Miss William has played has been significant. Comme il est. That being said," the judge continued, "my responsibility is not to reward unconventional success, but to ensure stability, legal clarity, and the long-term well-being of the child." A pause. "Therefore, I am denying the request for joint custody at this time." Gasps, soft but audible, rippled through the room. Lucas exhaled slowly. Camille's eyes widened, but she remained silent, lips pursed. "However," the judge added, "I am granting expanded visitation rights for Miss Whitmore, with structured time including weekends and designated holidays. Furthermore, I am requesting that the court appoint an independent child advocate to monitor Ethan's continued progress over the next 6 months." She looked directly at Camille. "Parenting is not only about biology. It's about presence, commitment, and respect for a child's environment. You'll have your chance to reconnect, but you will not disrupt what's clearly working." Then she turned to Lucas. "Ensure that Ethan's education remains supervised and documented. You've taken a risk by allowing an unlicensed individual to guide his studies, and while the result was positive, it must now be formalized." Lucas nodded. "Understood, Your Honor." The judge looked once more at Maya. "And, Miss William, while the law may not grant you a title, this court acknowledges your contribution. Consider pursuing certification. You clearly have the gift." Maya blinked, her throat tight. "Thank you, Your Honor." The gavel dropped. Court adjourned. Ethan leaned over to Maya, tugging at her hand. "So, I can stay?" She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetheart. You can stay." Lucas shook the judge's hand on the way out, then caught up to Maya and Ethan in the hallway. "Lunch on me," he said, almost smiling. Ethan bounced. "Can we get pancakes?" Maya laughed softly. "It's noon." Lucas shrugged. "It's a celebration." They found a small diner not far from the courthouse, red booths, warm coffee, and the smell of grilled cheese and maple syrup hanging in the air. Ethan scribbled math puzzles on a napkin, and Lucas and Maya watched him, something resembling peace washing over them. As they walked out into the sunshine afterward, Lucas paused on the sidewalk. "You didn't have to testify yesterday," he said. "You could have stayed out of it, kept it safe." Maya looked up at him. He's worth more than safe. Lucas nodded. I meant what I said before about making things formal. If you're willing, I'd like to fund your training. Teaching certificate. Whatever path you choose. Maya blinked, stunned. You want me to leave? She asked, half joking, half serious. No, Lucas said, a bit more earnest. I want you to grow. Ethan isn't the only one with a future. Maya looked at Ethan skipping ahead, humming to himself. She remembered the chalkboard, the flashcards, the napkin under her pillow. Okay, she said, I'll think about it. That night, Maya returned to her room above the garage and sat at her tiny desk. She opened a browser and typed into the search bar, "Teacher certification programs near me." She stared at the screen for a long time before clicking the first link. The next morning, she found a small package waiting at her door. Inside was a brand new spiral notebook, with a note tucked between the pages. Lucas's handwriting. Not every teacher begins in a classroom. Some begin in kitchens, in laundry rooms, or on front steps. Wherever you start, just promise me you'll keep going. Maya smiled. Later that day, during their math lesson, Ethan handed her a folded piece of paper. It was another problem he had written himself. But this time, at the bottom, in messy crayon letters, he had added, "Thank you for being my forever teacher." Maya couldn't answer right away. Her voice had gotten stuck somewhere in her heart. But she reached for his hand, gave it a gentle squeeze and whispered, "Always." Because teaching wasn't her job anymore. It was her calling. Maya's first day as a formally recognized tutor began before dawn, quiet, reflective, charged with purpose. The smell of freshly brewed coffee drifted up from the kitchen as Ethan, in pajamas, hovered by her side, clutching the napkin he'd pressed into her hand the night before. "Thank you for being my forever teacher." She slipped it into her apron pocket, heart warm. Lucas stood at the kitchen island, eyes soft when he looked at her, a contrast to the sharp man in the courtroom. "First official session?" he asked quietly. Maya met his gaze. "Yes, sir." He handed her an envelope. Inside, a prepaid application and tuition assistance form for an online preliminary teaching credential through Cal State Teach, an accredited California State University program that could be completed primarily online. "I thought this might help," Lucas said. "You don't have to decide today." Maya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Thank you." She carried the envelope upstairs, to her small, tidy quarters above the garage, and placed it gently beside her notebook, the one she had opened last night in search of teaching programs. Morning lessons began in the breakfast nook, but today, they had structure and a sense of legitimacy. The whiteboard held a schedule: warm up, word problems, snack break, fraction fun. She wrote in green, "Let's try something new today." Ethan beamed at the box of colorful manipulatives she set out: measuring cups, candy tokens, fraction circles, all ready for their structured play. It was learning, but intentional. Every step had purpose, her tone calm but vibrant. Midway through, Lucas peeked in a quiet nod, almost imperceptible. It meant more than praise ever had. By lunch, Maya returned to her makeshift desk, signing up for Cal State Teach's information session. The program's online flexibility would let her study around her hours in the Carter home, keeping lunches and lesson prep intact. She made a mental note to prepare for the CSET, California Subject Examinations for Teachers, and possibly CBEST, which are standard prerequisites. In the afternoon, she found herself in the laundry room with Ethan, who was practicing long division with cereal pieces. Maya stopped mid-sentence, watching him chew his lip in concentration and then break into a wide smile when he got the answer right. She remembered her mother cheering like that, reminding Maya she belonged. That evening, during dinner, Mrs. Adela approached her quietly. "Heard you're headed to teacher school," she whispered. "Good for you. Good for all of us." Maya nodded, eyes shining. "Thank you." Back in her room later, she opened the information packet from Cal State Teach. The program emphasized educational equity, diverse learning styles, and technology integration, exactly the tools she needed to sharpen her craft. Ethan knocked on her door softly. She opened it to find him clutching a math notebook. "Can you help me with these extra problems?" Her voice broke with emotion, always. They settled under the soft light. As Ethan tackled harder problems, she guided gently, teaching him not just math, but confidence.